I'm on. Okay. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting of March 10th. We have a short agenda, but some meaty conversations to have on some important topics. So to get going, we're first going to take care of some administrative issues. Even though it's March, we actually have some appointments to take care of. And so, Paul Tedesco, who has been our hazardous waste coordinator for a very long time, has tendered his resignation to that position. Thank you, Paul, for your dedication to that post. I would like to nominate Craig Hughes, our superintendent of streets, to fill that role. I've also spoken with the recycling committee, who had been working with Paul to do some marketing and promotion, and the recycling committee looks forward to working with Craig, as they do on most of their other activities, and to do the marketing, the promotion, the website stuff for all the hazardous waste days that are around in our communities. Hazardous waste is a opportunity to dispose of hazardous waste. We do not have our own hazardous waste disposal here in Dover, but there are about 7 or 8, 10 surrounding towns that allow Dover to share in the hazardous waste day as long as a Dover citizen goes there with a little coupon that they can get from the highway department. So that will be Craig and the recycling committee working and supporting him on that effort, if you so approve. So I'd like to move for Craig. It's I think it's a 1-year position.
So he's replacing Paul?
Yeah, so it's a 3-year position. So this would...
expires 2017.
Right. So this would be effective now until June 30th of 17.
Well, I'll make the motion that we appoint Craig Hughes as the hazardous waste coordinator.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. And thank you, Craig, for adding yet another job to your ever-expanding job description. Those shoulders are getting awfully big.
Yes. And
You have a fold out on your business cards?
well, you know what? We got to get Craig's business cards made today.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you, Craig, very much.
And Craig, while you are here, we mentioned this at the last meeting, but now we can say it to you in person. Thank you, thank you, thank you for what you and your crew have done this winter for the roads in the town of Dover. Truly, truly exceptional.
Thank you, the whole team. It's not just myself, but we have quite a staff down there, local contractors that help out, and they really all come together in the need, and we really need. And the citizens are all very patient, and the financial support we get from all the residents certainly helps, makes the job a lot easier. But we got to thank you very much.
Well, it is a wonderful team, and the team is led by a wonderful leader, so thank you again.
Which may be a good segue, Mrs. Lisman, into the snow and ice authorization.
Oh, while we're here again, okay, somewhere in our package, here we go. So we had authorized at town meeting last May a snow and ice budget of $344,000. Back on February 11th, the Board of Selectmen approved an additional authorization of $75,000, and on February 25th, we approved another authorization of $125,000, so we're up to $544,000, and Craig is now requesting an additional $75,000, half of which has already been spent with the outstanding invoices. So that's to be expected with the winter like this.
Right. I will mention, as you said, we are holding some invoices totaling about $35,000. But our materials, the salt shed, sand is right back out the door. So that's stuff that if we don't use, we have for next year. I'll mention one last thing. You may have heard the governor earlier in the month that, we're trying to get declaration from the feds for some reimbursement from FEMA. And that seems to be looking good. I did preliminary numbers just on that one blizzard. And it came to about $89,000. And since then, I know he's tried to group he's trying to group 4 of the major storms together, so that could potentially be more return for the town, so let's cross our fingers, and they seem to come through over the years, so.
2 questions. One, can we use Chapter 90 funds to repair any roads that were damaged?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I have 4 of those, I'll probably be requesting in the next month or 2.
Good. What's the high water mark for snow removal over the past decade or so? Anyone know?
What's that?
The high water mark, the money spent?
The record.
Record?
Yeah, the highest ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was about 485,000.
Oh, so we surpassed that.
Right. And expenses have gone up. I mean,
Yeah, that's
salt
sure,
was
yeah.
a big jump this year from, $48 to $68.
Yeah.
That was a huge, huge jump. And, we did use a little more of that than we had to because of the cold temperatures. Keep the sand from freezing, and the sand was quite a challenge at one point. And we were low at one point. We never run out of salt and sand. I make sure that doesn't happen. But you probably heard other towns, they were up, a lot of towns around us. And the big reason for that wasn't the lack of the salt company not having salt in Chelsea, but once Boston started screaming for trucks, they took them all from the salt company to haul snow for a higher rate. So I engaged a private contractor to haul salt independently for us on a daily basis into Boston. So he was bringing us out 2.5, 3 loads a day, and we stayed way ahead of it. And that worked out good, but.
Well, see, thank you for that. Good leadership and management. Here we go. Thank you.
Tom Wellesley, at one point, when I was getting a little nervous, they lent us 2 loads as well. It's a good neighborly thing we have going.
Well, we know that you've spent years fostering those relationships
Yep.
at so many different levels with so many different functions with the surrounding towns. No, that's great.
We need a motion for this.
Yep.
So I'll make the motion that we increase the snow and ice budget by an additional $75,000.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, well, and I assume we'll see a cry notice at some time for signs and mailboxes.
We'll see how it goes. I mean, people have gotten better over the years and so forth, and, a lot of them we just want those.
Well, Craig, again, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
You'll find them mailboxes.
Okay, so back to appointments for a moment then. On the Emergency Management Committee. Okay. So on Emergency Management, Peg Crowley's term had expired at the end of June of 2014, and she wasn't planning on re-upping. Peg and Jack London, who's Director of Emergency Management, the chief and I have had a couple of meetings to work on defining the role of that committee and how it functions within the emergency processes that we've established here in Dover. And so Peg is willing to, with that understanding, is willing to take another 3-year term. So I would like to move to appoint Peg Crowley to a 3-year term retroactive to July 1st, 2014.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Great, thank you. And Jim Rapetti, whose term expired in 2014, is not going to re-up. We don't need a second deputy director. Town code is strictly a director, who would be Jack London, and a deputy director, which is now Peg. So if we could remove Jim from the spreadsheet, from the website, and so forth. Jim has graciously offered to continue in his role as our ham radio operator, if that's ever needed in an emergency. And that's a function that really works directly with the chief of police, and he doesn't need to be part of the emergency management team to do that. Any questions on that?
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a bunch of visitors here tonight and citizens as well. So welcome to Jeff Meadow, Kate Keeney, and John Cohn from the Warrant Committee, and Candace McCann, who last night was voted by the caucus to be a candidate for Board of Selectmen. So welcome, Candace. Every 3 years, by law, we have a review of our OPEB situation in town, and this is the time to do it now. I'd like to welcome Parker Elmore from Odyssey Advisors. Odyssey Advisors is contracted by the town of Dover to do our analysis, to make sure that we understand where we are in our funding our OPEB liability, and that we make sure that to the best of our ability, we are making our annual contributions to meet those needs. So this is a rather complicated situation. We do have another expert here in the room. But what I'd like to ask is that we let Mr. Elmore go through his entire presentation first and hold your questions until the end. And then we'll open up to any discussion. So, Mr. Elmore, thank you for coming.
Mrs. Listman, if I may distribute these to
Oh,
members of the
sure.
warrant
Thank
committee.
you.
And I'm supposed to go through the entire report, which is short, slide, so keep it, a higher level, so you can get your questions, so I'm happy to answer them. So again, thank you for having me out. We're going to take a second or two to tell you kind of who our firm is. You wonder, what I'm doing here, basically. We're an actuarial management consulting firm. We've been in business since '98. We do this for about 250 plus municipal entities here in Massachusetts, from housing authorities to school districts to collaboratives to water authorities to towns, cities, etc. Including around here, Ashland, Sherborne, Dover, Sherborne Schools, Southland, Southborough, Wayland, etc. We're in 37 states, a couple clients in Europe. We have offices on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. Primarily focused on retirement. We do retirement medical type valuations for municipalities as well as private entities. We do traditional old style defined benefit plans, still exist in the municipal sector, not so much in the private sector anymore, as well as 401k type plans, 403b plans, that type of stuff. So that's kind of who we are and what we do. Really for you folks, on I guess page 3 of this, you'll see kind of comparing how you do over the 2-year period. Your liability goes slightly from 6 million to 6.4 million, which actually, all things equal, was a very positive experience. Even if about $500,000 less than we expected to go up. Basically, the issue is your Medicare type premiums for the people who are currently covered by Medicare went down, actually, as opposed to going up by 13%, which is what we expected. On the other hand, it was offset by the fact that we now use a more conservative mortality table, and it would reflect the fact that people are living longer. So we do reflect that. Your assets went from 2.2 million to 2.9 million. Again, very good experience over the period. Which caused your unfunded liability to drop from 3.7 million down to 3.5. We'll get into this in a second. You guys, in terms of funding perspective, are probably in the top 2 to 3% of the state in terms of how you're doing. Very few entities are funding in any type of material fashion. You guys are about 45% funded. Most people that I work with are funding. They throw in some free cash here and there. They've got 10,000 here, 20,000 there. You guys have actually put together a real plan that obviously I'm sure is serving a good steady to rating agencies. We try and encourage folks to do that because that's the one thing the rating agencies really want to see is a plan. You guys have done that. The next page we talk about those are kind of the balance sheet numbers, or the income statement type numbers. Your normal cost really represents the value of benefits being accrued each year, benefits being added each year on your liability. From 280 grand to 292 grand. So again, pretty much in line. Your net OPEB expense, which is really the cost of the plan, not the cash cost, how much money you're paying out each year, but how much money is really being charged against your income statement each year. Went from 453,000 to 462. So again, pretty much in line, nothing weird there. And the employer share of the cost. This is retiree only. So when I say that, the cost of your retirees went from 217,000 to 252,000. The key element is, again, that's the retirees only. People go, wow, we spent a lot more money than that. Well, that's your active employees. I'm looking only at the retirees here. And you guys also, again, continue to fund your OPEB trust. Again, far more and far higher levels than most entities. So you guys are definitely doing a favor to current and future taxpayers in the sense of going, protecting your bond rating as well as, paying off the debts that in theory 30, 40, 50 years ago, somebody should have been setting money aside. They did. But that doesn't change the fact that we are where we are. You guys are actually addressing the issue. So the question is, okay, he's come up with a $6.5 million number. Where do these numbers all come from? What underlies all these numbers? Well, really, a couple of the key elements here is, what do we use for an interest rate? In your guys' case, we use 7%. And then answer people, why 7%? Why not 4? Why not 3? Why not whatever? It's really based on whatever your guys' investment policy is. So you guys are investing the funds over the long term, and based on how you guys have chosen to invest the money, the balanced portfolio, over the long term, it's deemed that can earn 7% a year. That doesn't mean you earn 7% every year. There's some years you're going to be higher, some years you're going to be lower. We accept that. But we're not trying to, say, well, gee, last year they earned 4.7, this year they earned 13.3. No, we're trying to go for a long-term expectation. The other big question are termination rates. How long are people going to work here? When are they going to quit employment? When are they going to leave? Whatever. Retirement rates. When are people going to retire? They can stay until 65, 55. When are they going to leave? I would tell you in those cases, we use the assumptions from PARAC. We're not trying to look at your personal experience and go, gee, in Dover we find people do this, and in Wayland they do that, and in Southborough they do this. Your population is not really big enough to base it only on your experience, so we use the entire PARAC model across the state to more representative population. And the other question is, okay, if people were eligible to take the benefit at retirement, how many of them will actually take it? We assume 80% of those who are eligible will take it. That's based on, again, what we see across the state. And it's also based on, again, what your cost sharing is. If you guys had you guys are already charging people 50%, which is the maximum you're allowed to do under state law. So it's not like you can say, hey, we'll charge them 60% or 70%, but you can't, you're as far as you can go. That again, we find right now, it's still the availability of a plan. With the exchanges on board with the Affordable Care Act, I think that election percentage may drop over time, but I think that's going to be a matter of people getting comfortable with the exchanges. And the other side of this is, and I say this to all the towns we work with, is the way your guys' systems are all set up is, if I'm 58 years old and I leave, and I decide not to take medical, that's pretty much a one-time election. I can't come back 7 years later when I hit 65 and say I'd like to get back in the medical plan. The issue you run into is, the exchanges, perhaps because of tax credits, I might be able to get a better deal on the exchange than I can through the town. So I'm a 58-year-old retired with my tax credits. I might be able to buy covered on the exchange for, say, $150 a month net of tax credits. Instead, I'm going to buy your plan for $250 a month because I don't want to miss out on the chance to get benefits at 65. So, in effect, your plan is forcing people to buy a benefit that they really don't want to buy to cost them more money and cost you more money, because otherwise they get carved out of a benefit later. So I encourage everybody to think about working with their bargaining groups to think about maybe a one-time opt back in at 65, because you might be able to get a situation where Uncle Sam can pick up a large chunk of this bill. You can actually make better for the town and better for the retiree. So you guys both save money. Hey, Uncle Sam pays a little bit more, but he's not here, so that's not a problem. So that's all fine. As far as healthcare cost inflation, we're assuming a 5% from now until the end of time. I will tell you that right now everybody's seeing favorable experience. I mentioned before, you guys had good experience over the last 2 years. That's great. At some point in time, past experience tells us that will end. Many of us saw this, those who are old enough saw this in the early 90s. We saw a very favorable experience for a flat negative trend for about 3 years, and then it spiked back up. We saw about 2 to 3 years of 15% increases. Things have a way of reverting to the mean. Now, I will hope that we stay in a world with 2 and 3% increases, and that would be great. My expectation is we're going to come back to 5, 6, 7% increases, because we have 30, 40, 50 years of experience to show us that. But we'll see what happens. Maybe we have turned the cost curve and we made everything better, and if so, that would be great. I think we'd all be big fans of that, but I just don't know that I would buy that quite yet. So I guess I would say don't start spending the money to like that. Next slide is going to show you guys how you compare your local peers, basically. And we split this into people that are funding and people that aren't funding, really, because people who are funding using a 7% interest rate, people who are not using a 4% interest rate. And the difference in interest rate significantly skews the liabilities. But as an example, you guys are funding, Wayland down the street is also funding. Your normal cost per employee, basically the same, $1,600 and $1,550, so again, the same number. You guys are 45% funded, they're 40% funded. Your cost per retiree is $4,400, theirs is $3,800. So again, you guys are right in line with your neighbors there. If you compare yourself to some of your other neighbors, there's like Ashland and Dartmouth and Foxborough and Sherborne, Again, your numbers are very much in line. And if we look at our clients across Massachusetts, again, you're much lower than our average client in Massachusetts. And again, that's based on about 250 plus clients across Massachusetts. You guys are, significantly better experience and better liabilities than are your peer group. So you guys have definitely done a good job of managing your costs. As I mentioned before, the normal cost on the next slide, the normal cost per active employee, that's where the benefits being earned by an employee. Think of this as deferred compensation, if you will. John or Mary makes $40,000 working for the town. They get a pension contribution that you guys put in on their behalf. They get vacation time. They get health insurance. They're also getting this benefit, which is really a benefit payable 20, 30 years from now when I retire. And they're earning, in this case, for a town employee, about $1,700 per year in foregone, effectively hidden compensation, if you will, will be paid in retirement. For a police officer, it's about $2,200. For a fireman, it's about $3,500. So that's basically what they're earning in foregone compensation, if you will. That's what, if you set aside for each of those people every year, that amount of money, by the time they got to retirement, you would have enough money to cover their benefit for the rest of their life. And I know these next slides, I'm not going to see anything there, so it's more or less to remind me to talk about these things. The Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, healthcare reform, a lot of different words for it, but basically the gist of this is the Affordable Care Act changed a lot of things about healthcare. One of the things it changes is something called an excise tax. This excise tax takes effect in calendar 2018. And what that means is for plans with a value above certain threshold amounts, which is $10,200 for a single plan, $27,500 for a family plan, this is not the town share, this is the total value of the plan. You pay an excise tax of 40 cents on the dollar for every dollar that exceeds that amount of money. So in your guys' case, you're not going to be hitting the excise tax in 2018. I would say you're probably going to hit it in 25, 2026 based on your guys' plan design. But when that happens, for every dollar you spend above that amount, you will pay 40 cents on the dollar to the federal government. So then the question is, well, why would I want to do that? To which the answer is, I can't imagine you would. And so that's going to be up to you and your bargaining groups to figure this out, to really encourage them to take a lower cost basis plan. And I know that's a struggle for them because their argument would be is we bargained healthcare and that's something we really bargained. But the reality is if you're going to pay 40 cents of every dollar on top of what you're spending, that provides less money for benefits, less money for salaries, less money for all kinds of things. You could offer them something along the lines of we'll cut the benefit down, we'll give you 15 cents in cash, and we'll keep 25, or however you guys want to negotiate it. But better keep the money between you and the employees rather than giving it to the feds. So you're seeing a lot of people do some plan design things now to really get around that and start taking, the argument, much like Social Security or any number of these big things, is going small changes today account for big changes later. You don't want to wait until you get to 2024 and decide, okay, we got to slash plans by 15% or something like that. You're better off making small incremental changes as you go. I guess from a recent study, I would tell you, Towers Perrin, which is Towers, now called Towers Watson, one of the largest consulting firms out there, recently did a study in September that they expect 48% of large employers to hit the excise tax in 2018, and 82% of them hit it by 2023. So a lot of people are going to be hitting it. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Then the question is, well, Congress will let this happen, they're going to do something. That may happen, who knows? Until people start paying the excise tax and people go up in arms about it, we'll see what happens. That said, it is projected to raise a lot of money. And if you're familiar with the federal budget process and budget windows and 5-year forecasts and all that kind of stuff, they can't really afford to repeal this because that has about $280 billion in theoretical tax premiums to come into that 5-year window. So either they decide to just call it a tax cut, in which case one side or the other is going to claim they're just giving money away, or you have to find a revenue replacement. And right now, I don't see anybody agreeing to raise taxes by $280 billion to replace this. So we will see what happens. So just take that as a caution. So the question is, what's next? Like I said, you guys have done a very good job of managing things. You have a funding plan in place that will get you funded by about 2037, which is about a year earlier than the original forecast, because you've had some good experience. Now, I will tell you, as I tell this to everybody, these numbers change. 2 years from now, we'll have another set of numbers, and the numbers will be different than this. They might be better, they might be worse. I don't know what your medical care costs are going to do over the next 2 years. I don't know that your employees might decide to stick around longer or retire earlier, or you might have people live longer than expected or die earlier than expected. Those are the things we don't know. So But the thing is, these are long-term 60, 70, 80-year forecasts for me. So the numbers are going to bounce up, they're going to bounce down. As I said to Jerry Lane, we started this a few years back. Don't try to adjust your funding schedule every year and go, okay, we have a little bit of good experience, we'll cut the funding schedule back by 20 grand, and the next year, oh my God, we're going to raise it by 40 grand. Revisit the funding schedule every 4 to 5 years. Don't try and make this thing a moving target where you're bouncing all over the place. When you have a funding schedule right now that works, you can either, much like your pension funding, you can either say, listen, we'll take it, we'll cut a year off the funding schedule, that's great. Or you decide a couple years from now, okay, we'll cut the funding schedule down a little bit, we'll still go to 2038. Or we can go to 2040, there's no obligation to be here by 2038. You guys, like I said, are well ahead of your peers. So, again, I guess with that said, you guys are in very good shape. I mean, it's nice to deliver good news. Very, you've run the plan well, you address the issues, you set money aside. With that, I guess particular questions I can answer, comments, concerns?
I just want to make sure I heard you correctly.
Yeah.
So the actual benefit that employees are getting is a full healthcare benefit,
Yeah.
not a Medigap benefit.
Correct.
So in the event, as a town, we were able to negotiate a different benefit, that could dramatically reduce our unfunded liability, but it would have to be negotiated with each of you.
True, but on the other hand, your post-65 coverage, your post-Medicare coverage really integrates with Medicare right now. So it's like a Medigap policy, it coordinates with Medicare. So Medicare is primary, and your guys' plan is secondary to that. So Medicare is already paying about 70 cents of every dollar for your retiree claims once people hit Medicare eligibility.
Okay, so then it's the piece from 60 till okay, so
But in terms of-
I misunderstood.
But in terms of where the actual costs are for the plan, about 80 cents of every dollar of the plan, in terms of the ultimate liabilities, goes from Medicare on. So even though the costs for a premium are far higher from 55 to 65, the fact that we have 30 years potentially or even more of coverage from 65 on, that's really where the majority of the dollars come from. So that's why we see a lot of towns, we used to be on what's called the MedX 3 plan,
Right.
they've gone to the MedX 2 plan, which is a cheaper plan.
Okay.
We've seen a lot of towns save very significant dollars on their OPEB costs by doing that. So anything you can do, as I tell folks all the time, your HMO Blues and your Harvards and your Tufts and all that, those things don't have a lot of impact on your OPEB liability. They have a lot of impact on your day-to-day costs because you're active by those plans, and that's where the majority of your money goes. If you're trying to look at just the Medicare, the OPEB silo by itself, the Medicare plan is really where you want to focus because 80 cents for every dollar is on that Medicare bucket. So that's really where you get the bang for the buck. But if you're looking at the total holistic town side, don't ignore those other plans because you're probably getting more dollars per spend on the actives than you do on the retirees.
But are you required to provide the same plans for your retirees and your active employees? Couldn't you?
It's my understanding in Massachusetts, you are required to provide the same for the non-Medicare retiree that you offer the active employees. I'm not a lawyer, but it's my understanding of the statute.
Then another question on the discount rate.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that towns that fund their plans use a 7% discount rate, or towns that don't use a 4%.
Yeah.
Are those, is this a firm policy? Are those governed by?
No, I mean, yeah, it's not a firm policy. I guess I would say is two things. As far as the unfunded plans, the 4%, that's really about probably the highest rate I think the auditors feel comfortable signing to.
Okay, so that's what.
So that's really, because ultimately these are financial statements and we don't produce financial statements, so we do whatever the auditors are comfortable with. As far as the funded plans, it's based on whatever your investment policy is. I know the state recently went from 8.25 down to 7.75, and I would argue that's still too high, but that's not my place. But that said, I don't think most of you are willing to invest in a way to where 7.75 or 8% is really viable for the long term. Because I don't think most of these towns are willing to go to an 80-20 split of stocks and bonds. I just don't think most of you are aggressive enough or tolerant enough of the volatility that would come from that.
Well, and if you believe in the prudent man theory, you wouldn't really do that.
Yeah.
60/40 is about as far as.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I say, so I think most towns, tough time going to your taxpayers and saying, well, we lost a ton in the market, we need more money.
Right.
Most towns I know don't want to have those conversations with their taxpayers. That's why we find 7 is probably about the upper band of where, I think most towns are comfortable investing.
So what is the threshold for a plan being categorized as funded versus unfunded? You know, I certainly see the examples,
Yeah.
it's 0 to 5 in the unfunded, but what's,
And it really comes down to 2 things, is do you have a plan for ongoing funding?
okay.
And are you contributing in, say, the next 4 to 5 years, are you contributing what's called your annual required contribution each year? So if you're gonna be doing that, then your auditors at that point will allow us to consider you a funded plan, you're making a significant pathway toward funding. If you were saying we're throwing in free cash every time we have it, so it's 10 grand here, 20 grand there,
Okay.
that's not really a funded plan, that's a ad hoc funding.
Okay, so it's more of having a defined funding plan
Correct.
in place that is making a dent anymore.
And it doesn't have to necessarily be, as I tell everybody, there's different ways to fund. As an example, you guys have a 30-year schedule that gets you a certain way. Town of Middleborough we work with is more of a backloaded schedule in the sense of going, we decided to look at theirs in combination with their pension funding schedule, so they'd be fully funded on pension in 2034, so take modest funding from now until 2034, and we'll roll the pension funding in from 2034 to about 2044 and get the plan funded that way. We have other folks who fund some portion, if not all, of the normal cost each year. We have other folks who start at a certain amount, be increased by 25,000 a year or 3% a year or whatever. We have other folks who are funding a certain percentage of payroll each year. So there's not a magic way to fund, I think, is that
It's just having something.
some type of plan, yeah.
Some framework.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll let other people ask questions.
Well, thanks for coming in, this is sort of good. Robin really took most of my good questions too, so. Generic question, the Obamacare and the excise tax?
Yep.
Is that indexed over time?
It is indexed, but it's indexed to general CPI, net medical care inflation. So generally, medical care inflation runs about 2.5% above CPI. So that's the issue there, is that while the $10,200 would go up by, say, 2.5% a year, if medical care costs going up by 5% a year, medical care costs, this trend is going up this way, but this one's going up like this. That's how we catch up by 2025, 2026.
Okay. A follow-up on the discount rate.
Yeah.
I'm in real estate myself, and I deal with the discount rates and valuations of commercial buildings. And to the extent I can get in a conversation with the appraiser on a bank to value the building,
Yeah.
do towns or cities have the chance to get in the conversation about discount rate, which obviously has a huge impact in these numbers?
It does. I would say as a general rule, if the idea is they would like to go to a lower discount rate, yes, they have an opportunity to be in the conversation. You know, we're already pretty much at the high end. I mean, I would put it to you in these terms. If you read the GASB 45 statement as it is written, we would have your discount rate for an unfunded plan of about 0.1%, which would cause liabilities to just be insanely large and would make most towns look bankrupt. And so the auditors are willing to provide a little bit of leeway on that to reflect the fact that rates are historically low, and we expect them to come back to something, I don't know about normal, because they've been this way for the last 7 years in a downward cycle. At some point, the argument is they have to go up, but we've been saying that for 7 years.
Well, the yield curve is suggesting
Yeah.
that, but it has before.
Yeah, I mean, so we've all been saying that for a long time, and eventually up to the 2/3 will be right, but I don't know when. So yeah, I mean, and that's really the issue behind it is, you know, 4% is really the upper band of what we find the auditors are comfortable signing to, and that's why it's become kind of the default rate. We also, or any other firms in the state, we use 4%. I don't think any of us love it. I will tell you that under the OPEB exposure draft, if you guys are familiar with GASB 67 and 68 on the pension side, we have a lot more disclosures to start seeing on June 30th of this year's financial statements. But we have a comparable version of that on the OPEB side that will be effective, I believe, for fiscal 18 is the current forecast. It hasn't been approved yet, but that's the understanding. So when that happens, we'll have a lot of comparable things there. Much like in your pension side, you no longer get to say, listen, I don't use 8.25% anymore. It's now based on whatever your investment policy is, and we have to look at what do you expect to earn on each of the asset classes, and whatever your percentage allocation is to each asset class, that drives your discount rate. It's going to be the same thing on GASB 45. So we have an unfunded plan, we say you're 100% based on money markets that are 1/10 of 1%. 4% is going to be very difficult to get to anymore. So I think in 2018, for those folks, while GASB can mandate that you fund, I think we're gonna find it very difficult not to fund by that point because their financial statements will just look awful if they don't. So I think while GASB can't force you to fund, the downside of not funding may incent people to do that.
Part two of my question is, if we went to another valuation firm, they're all gonna tell us the same thing about discount rate?
Yeah, I mean, the discount, yeah. I mean, GASB 45 is pretty clear on that. If you're gonna use a funded plan, use the long-term interest rate. Okay, we can all argue over what is the, under your investment policy, what are the long-term rates of return in the various asset classes? Maybe we could argue for 7.25, maybe 6 3/4. I don't think we're gonna be materially. If someone wants to run it at 8, they can certainly do that. I don't think our auditor would be very comfortable signing to that, nor would I necessarily be comfortable signing mine into it.
No.
Right, I think it's the auditors that really.
Yeah.
Yeah, the auditors ultimately sign
I'm
off.
just getting up to speed on
Yeah.
different generic questions.
I was just trying to help you out.
Thank you so much.
That's what I'm here for.
Odyssey Advisors as a group, even though you guys are actually looking forward here and telling us what unfunded liabilities and all that stuff, why don't we look back? How's the track record on the past results of these actual summaries? Do you guys look at that and say, oh, we're off, is it up and down?
Oh, we look every cycle to see, you know, how we did versus expectation. And it usually comes down to, like I said this time, your guys' medical care costs for the Medicare premiums went down rather than up by 13%. You know, had we known that medical care costs are going to go down, we certainly would have reflected that. But there's no way for us, as I tell folks all the time on this, the key element versus this, say like a pension plan. In a pension plan, ultimately what we project is salary. So I'm going to assume it's going to go up by 3.5% a year, which means it'll go between 3 and 4. Pretty narrow band. In medical care costs, I'm going to assume it's going to go by 5% this year, which means somewhere between probably -5 and +15. Because the difference is, on the pension side, you guys decide how much you want to pay for salaries. On the medical side, you guys have no say in what people generate for medical care costs. They go to their doctor, the doctor decides to charge X. You guys are never in that conversation. On the pension side, you guys run the conversation. On the medical care side, you get informed about the conversation. So that's really the big difference, is you guys have no cost control. You have no say in the matter, and that's why that's really the ultimate driver of these things. The other assumptions, like I said, between retirements and termination and things like that, those are the PARAC assumptions. They're going to be plus or minus here and there for a given year, but that's not ultimately what the driver is. It's really going to be medical care costs.
So is there an acceptable band? You use that word, and I was thinking of the word as you said, actually.
I mean, there is, although again, I would say is the medical care cost is really the biggest driver, and that's the one that, and I tell people all the time, is the numbers are going to be significantly different potentially 2 years from now. Your guys' numbers came in this time pretty much in line. That said, they came in pretty much in line because PARAC pretty much recommended everybody move to a new mortality table, which is more expensive. So that increased your liabilities. But you had the big savings or the gain in the Medicare premiums, which more than offset that. Had we not had the Medicare savings, I'd be here telling you, hey, your liabilities went from $6 million up to $7.5 to $8 million. But instead, the Medicare costs gave a lot of that back, so now I get to sit here and deliver good news. Absent that, I do tell you, oh my God, your costs went up by this much money. So on the upside, you got to very effectively a negative item because of your good experience on the medical care side. 2 years from now, there's no real reason to see any other items like that are coming up because PARAC's not going to change the mortality table again. That said, I don't know what's happening with medical care costs. I've seen a couple of towns that are seeing, we're a suburban health group, they're seeing 13% increases forecast for fiscal 16. We'll see what happens on the Medicare side. Medicare costs have been going down over the last couple of years, not up. And so GAO's, put up some good numbers about that recently, and hopefully that continues. If that happens, on your active side, you'll have a bad experience because of the West Suburban rates going up. But on the other hand, your Medicare costs going down or flat, you're going to make your OPEB numbers look great 2 years from now. Your active numbers not so much, but your OPEB numbers look great.
So I appreciate your answers, and the reason I'm asking those type of questions are, I believe that we have an excellent program in place. And the question that I'm asking is, so it's all moving targets.
Yeah.
And when people ask us why what are we planning, so forth, so on. There are so many moving targets that we can't answer. Yeah, a plan in place is an excellent one for the town of Dover and as compared to all the other communities surrounding us and in the Commonwealth.
Absolutely, no, that's why I say you guys are in the top 2 to 3% easily of the state. And the key element I tell folks is the forecast numbers, be it on the funded status or the liabilities, are relatively good for the next 3, 4, 5 years. When you get to years 30 and 40, what's my confidence level on those numbers? Not nearly as high.
Right.
Because, I always say this half jokingly, if I could honestly predict things that well 30 and 40 years out, I wouldn't be talking to you. Nothing personal, I'm like out on my private island, chat, whatever. But, that's the reality. I mean, anybody who tells you they can predict things that well 30, 40 years out, they're going to tell me the truth. So, I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. So again, these numbers, said they're highly volatile because the medical care costs are going to go between -5 and +15 next year. We're assuming 5. Only thing I can sure is that we're wrong. I don't know what the number's going to be, and so it might magically work out to be 5, so it's purely accidental, but, again, from what we're seeing, West Suburban's going to be a lot higher than that, Medicare will probably be a little bit lower than that, might average out to 5, but that's, we'll end up seeing when push comes to shove.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, I'd like to open it up to our guests tonight, if there are any questions for Mr. Elmore.
I'm sorry, my name is Jeff Merrill and I'm with the Dover Reform Committee. I don't have any questions per se, but I have a few comments. This is the first time ever that the Reform Committee has been delving into the OPEB situation and in fact received this pass on it. So we honestly have a number of questions out of just total ignorance as to the relative relationship between the numbers that are here that we've never seen before. So we would ask David's help to schedule a phone call with Odyssey and say, listen, here, or we can give you a set of questions in advance and say, as we look forward, which we will, these are the things that want to catch our eye. I mean, you have a simple question. Out of all the pages you have, out of all the numbers, what's the one that you want us to remember the most? I'm assuming it's the funding ratio. But that said, that's a kind of question we may have only out of lack of understanding.
Yeah, but I'm saying in your case, it's really going to be the funding ratio which really ties to the unfunded liability.
I understand. But to remind the Board of Selectmen and to remind Robin and David, as part of our examination for the bond anticipation note, we had a conversation with the town's investment banker, and they gave us very detailed information, some of which involved the OPEB levels. So we actually have discrete information from First Southwest for the 33 other communities in Massachusetts that are rated AAA. Now, we're going to go back through Jerry to First Southwest and say, hey, have you updated it with the most recent numbers that the municipalities have available? If that's the case, then we'll, again, have a better understanding as time goes by where Dover stands in terms of unfunded liability versus funded liability. And that all ties into the feeling that you put words to, which is all of this is going to mean more going forward for everybody.
Yeah.
One of the concerns that was very clear in terms of Moody's during the First Southwest discussion and most recently in the bond anticipation note rating was that OPEB and pension liabilities are going to be key factors going forward in terms of the community's credit rating. Well, obviously, that's an element where we want to really understand if this is going to take us from a AAA to a AA, what is that potential impact? What do we want to do to change it, and how do we change things to make sure we don't lose that rating if that's our objective? And last but not least, you happen to mention another entity that we are involved with, and that's the Regional School Committee, which has done nothing.
Yep.
So we are very interested and concerned as to how we can kind of get the ball rolling on that score, because I think it is a very important element to take in the next 18 to 24 months, if not sooner.
Well, I'm saying, no, you're right. I mean, Moody's and Fitch and S&P, they all look at these things. And
Right.
the key element is, I tell folks all the time about this, your pension obligation and your retirement medical OPEB obligation they're not independent silos, they're really a combined retirement entity. And people, look at one side and not the other. You got to look at it as a combined package. And whether you want to fund more on the pension plan, less on the OPEB, whatever, just look at it as a combined thing, you're going to be funded by someday, whether it be 2035, 2040, pick a date, it doesn't really matter. But the thing these folks all want to see is, do you have a plan to address the issue?
Right.
And so again, it's not so much that you're funded by 2035 or 2045, but do you have an actual plan to get there?
Right, I mean, the obligations are associated through the contractual process.
Yep.
So you can't separate the two,
Exactly.
unless you obviously argue to make a change. But that being the case with the GASB and the FASBs, it's abundantly clear that over the next 5 years, those are going to be very key pieces of information that people have collected to date, but have not used as real evaluations for communities and corporations going forward.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, on the municipal side, is, I tell us all the time, we work with, is you only get compared to your peer group. So you're not, when I'm looking to buy a municipal bond, I don't necessarily compare you to General Electric, I compare you to all the other municipal bond entities I can look at. And so you folks in the world of municipal entities are very well funded. Now, compared to say, you know, a General Electric or whatever, your financial statement may look better, may look worse, I have no idea. My point is, you're not really going to the same bond buyer. You're going after bond buyers looking at municipal things.
Right.
The big question is, okay, well, there's only certain things I can do. I'm in the state of Massachusetts, I have certain obligations here. I can't compare myself to somebody in South Carolina, but it's a totally different world they deal with, or state of Connecticut where you work, or state of Delaware. They have all very different laws in these different places, so you folks can't charge more than 50%. You guys can't vary contributions by service. You guys, you know, the state sets your eligibility. Yeah, I mean, the state sets your eligibility, and you know, yeah, I work with people in California, we have plans that you go 30 years, you pay one thing, you go 15 years, you pay another. It's a very different animal, so you have to compare yourself against your peers here, and that's just the world you live in, so.
I understand, but one of the things that also is becoming more true is you see articles about this very issue
Yep,
every week.
yep,
Now, obviously, they tend to more skew towards state level issues,
Yep.
like Illinois, or Pennsylvania, or California. Not as many in terms of municipalities of our size, or even municipalities in Massachusetts.
Yep.
But, you know, as we gear up toward our annual meeting, one of the things we as a war committee are going to be prepared for is a question on that very issue.
Yep.
To say, where are we and how this is going to follow forward?
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I would like to clarify a little bit that this is not the first time that the warrant committee has been involved in OPEB analysis, with all due respect
stand corrected.
to past warrant committees. And it's certainly the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen and our staff and treasurer to address this issue as well, with authority here at the Selectmen's level. So we appreciate the work of the warrant committee. But I think the bottom line tonight is that when we're in the top 2 or 3% of the towns in Massachusetts, and we have our AAA rating, and we're aware of potential increases coming down the pike, and we keep that in mind as we look at our free cash position, then you know, I think we can end tonight's discussion, knowing that we're in good shape, that we know what we know what we don't know, we know what we need to look at, we know what our risks are in the future. But right now, we've got a good plan, and we've got a whole bunch of people, our committee and the selectmen and our staff, prepared to proceed to address this on the basis that has to be addressed, to make sure that in the future that we're maintained as a strong position as we do right now. So any other questions from Stonewall? No? Thank you so very much.
thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. It's good information. Thank you. Okay, while the warrant committee is still here, town meeting, town election time, this is a traditional time when we ask the warrant committee whether you guys are aware of any warrant articles ballot questions, that you would want to have on the town ballot at town election, which is on the 18th of May.
I don't believe anything has come up that we anticipate, would need to be addressed right on the ballot.
Okay, it's a relatively simple town meeting as well, so we don't have anything that we've identified for the ballot either, so we just wanted to check in as a warrant committee.
Nothing's come up.
Nothing's come up. Okay, well, if something comes up, please address it as a committee, at your next meeting, and Jim will be a liaison there in case, because we do have timelines to make sure if there's something that's on your mind.
Tomorrow night?
Yes.
Thank you.
There you go.
Can't wait, thanks.
Okay. Next item on
You
the,
must be having withdrawals.
thank you to my two CFOs over here. Next item on the agenda is to continue the conversation that we started at our last Selectmen's meeting on the charge for the Water Study Committee. So in your packet is draft number 2. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
This has just been amended slightly, and I actually saw that there was a word missing, so in the 3rd paragraph, last line, where it says Massachusetts Department of Environmental Affairs, just stick report after that. Forgot the noun. But basically, this is, as we talked about at our last meeting, the Selectmen made a commitment to the town after the issues and discussions relative to the Springdale acquisition that we really needed to start taking a look at our water situation, the quality, the quantity, start developing some data so that over time we can address the impact of development on water, which is so key to Dover since we're not connected to a public water supply system. So this is, excuse me, phase 1. And I only have, 2 members so far. So I'm still working on it.
2 months you've identified
Yes,
as possible.
Justine Kent Nortram
Right.
has agreed to be a member, and Boynton Blue has agreed.
Boynton, good.
Yep. So I'd like to find 1 or 2 more,
Okay.
and I'll work on
A
that.
geologist would be great.
Geologist, hydrologist,
Any
exactly.
geologists out there?
Any scientists out there, water engineers, whatever. If anybody knows anybody, let us know.
It's so important to the community
Oh, yeah,
to
I
be able to
agree,
study
1,000%.
this and set up a baseline.
So we've identified it's a great charge, so the timetable for everything else,
So the expectation would be that by end of calendar year 15, the committee would come to the board with a recommendation on how to proceed.
okay, so let's take a step back. When do you want to appoint Justine Boynton?
Oh, as soon as I find some other folks.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks. So just to round it off in one session.
Yes, I'm sorry,
Thank you.
yes, yeah.
Okay,
So if you think of anybody, let me know, we have to,
Well, ask around.
You know-
We did post something on the website, correct?
But Barbara Ross Schechter, our chair of the Board of Health,
Right.
when she was thinking about creating this committee, had put some articles, I think, in the paper as well as on the website. She received 2 expressions of interest. I've got a phone message into 1, and I've been unable to contact the others.
Okay.
I don't know the legal answer to this question, and it might be just common sense, but could we tap some of the expertise of colonial water into this committee? Do they have someone who has that type of background who we could use? I don't know if it's legal to use someone who wouldn't be a Tower Dover resident. Number one.
Certainly as a resource,
Yeah.
they're a natural to look to for what they know, and I'm sure they'd be willing to share as they have so far.
And they were actually very helpful. They gave us the June 2004 report from the
saw that.
state that we didn't
Right.
even know about.
Yeah,
So-
okay, so use them as a source after the fact, supplemental to this group,
Yes.
okay, thanks.
It's a great
No,
point.
that makes a lot of sense,
Great
because
point.
they were very, very helpful, very
Yeah.
forthcoming.
Yep, Mr. Vaughn's very, very good deal with. Okay,
Yes, because right now, they're, as he explained, they're using data from the state as to their pumping quantities, okay? And they're not up to the 80% yet, which I think is a red flag.
okay.
But I would imagine they too would be interested to, they need to know what that denominator is too, as they're conducting their business.
Now, do we want to set a date as a goal to get a third person to name these people?
Before I go off the board,
I like that date also, by the way. Okay. Okay.
ASAP.
Yeah, I think it's okay, good.
In the springtime.
Springtime is a week from Friday.
In the springtime. Not by the springtime.
Okay, good. Well, I think it's a great idea, and I know the first two people you mentioned, Justine Boynton, are so dedicated to this type of cause, for the betterment of the town.
Well, you know, Justine was on the 1995
Right, I was just gonna
study
mention
committee,
that,
which
so
we
it's
I
great
had
to
a report for. She's also done a lot of work with this, not only in her role as banker, but her role with the trustees of reservation and her role as executive director of the Upper Charles. So she's very, very interested in this. Boynton, of course, is also very interested. He has tremendous historical knowledge. He has maps that his father had made, 40, 50 years ago. So there's a lot of good foundational information that we can grow from. What we're lacking is a methodology to update it and then maintain it, and find a way to analyze it to really understand how that data links to our questions about development. So I would like a motion to accept this charge.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you very
You
much.
did a really nice job,
Thank you.
Karen.
Thank you.
Can't take credit for it.
Okay.
Well, since you'll have nothing to do after May.
Yeah, Carol, may we appoint you?
Sure. I've actually read all those reports, I got that. Okay, administrative stuff. We have a couple of special licenses, and I will just read them all together, and then we can do one vote. We have a special license from the Connor Center for March 18th for dinner. We have another one from the Connor Center on March 24th, a program. And we have another one from the Connor Center on March 25th, a cocktail hour and dinner. All have been approved by Chief McGowan. So do I have a motion to approve these three requests?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think I gave it the nuts and the...
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have a prior notice from building maintenance. Mr. Ramsey?
Mrs. Lisbon, we had a couple of,
Let me guess, ice cream.
no, no. Actually, before all the bad weather started,
okay.
we had a heating pipe that started to leak in the staff room at the CDC over at the Carroll Community Center. And the resultant repair work there to replace the section of pipe, there was asbestos involved, sheetrocking involved, and some water damage to the floor, which all had to be repaired. And then if you recall, one of our boilers went down just as the weather hit sub-zero. And the breaching pipe from that boiler disconnected from its exhaust. We had some asbestos problem there, and we had to repair that work to boiler number one. Both of those resulted in repair expenses of approximately $13,000.
Why wouldn't we go directly to reserve fund transfer on this if there's the present balance is negative?
Well, there is a current, there's about $4,000, I believe, in that account right now.
So it's negative according to that.
That's in the subline, Mr. Dolly.
Okay,
It's always-
thank you.
So there's still money in that overall budget. We desperately try to have prior notices before we come to reserve fund transfer.
Right,
requests.
I knew that. But I was
To give
just-
you a heads up, we are more than likely going to need the reserve fund transfer for this amendment.
This is the Carroll Community Center operating budget line item for maintenance.
Yes.
Oh, okay, oh, it's not building maintenance.
It's building maintenance, the subline.
Oh,
Carroll
okay.
Community Center.
Carroll Community
Yeah,
Center,
yeah.
right.
Okay.
So we have in our operating budget specific line items for each of the buildings.
Right.
So there's a town hall, there's a community center, there's a protective agencies building, and so.
And the bottom line of that budget still has about $4,000 in it, but it's not going to be enough to get us through the fiscal.
The total budget.
Did we get any damage from the ice dams and?
We've had some incidental roof leaks. Probably the worst was at the PD, couple of storage areas, the ceilings were damaged.
That's PD.
Excuse me, police department,
Okay.
police station. And then the Great Hall, over one of the windows, there's actually some plaster that's falling down from that. But given the winter we've had, it's remarkable we haven't had more damage.
The library looked like they may potentially have a lot, but
But they haven't yet.
Okay, because they had beautiful icicles one morning.
And we actually closed the lower entrance down there because of that.
I went to go in the lower entrance this morning and it was closed, but I think by this afternoon it probably can be open. I mean, it's a big.
All the
The icicles are gone,
roofs
it's
seem
just
to
a
be
little bit in there.
nice and clear now. A couple days of warming.
So maybe this is a good year to be painting a library. Okay, so.
Timing is everything.
Timing is everything. I move that we approve this prior notice. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
So I saw your little note there, insurance, so this isn't covered by insurance? I thought that was a good question.
There's repairs now.
Okay.
I assumed as you did that it had something to do with the winter.
Okay.
So,
The winter would be,
yes.
and we're looking at that, but we don't think that the
And
damage,
this is just,
this is just
wear and
normal
tear.
wear and tear.
And we have minutes of February 26th. I have to commend Mona.
yeah, Mona.
In addition to everything else that is going on in the Selectmen's office, the staffing issues we've got right now, and the fact that we're getting ready for town meeting and open hearing and everything else, for you to be able to get these minutes out so quickly, thank you so much.
As I read them, I'm upset we don't have an update on the Minuteman Regional School Committee tonight.
Would you like me to give you one? Do you have,
I'll keep in suspense until our next meeting.
Would you like to give us one?
there is nothing new since.
There you go. But so nice of you to ask.
But however, since you asked, March 17th,
Yes,
They,
Woods Baldwin's
right.
presentation.
there's a presentation on this new school they would like to build.
And you will be saying some remarks at the open hearing.
I will. I am trying to figure out how to do a decision tree in PowerPoint. It's not that easy.
Good luck.
So if anybody has a decision tree software, send it my way.
Good luck.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you again, Nora. Couple of comments before we adjourn. Let's see. This coming Monday, March 16th at 7:30 PM in the Great Hall is the open hearing. This is an annual event hosted by the Warrant Committee, where they go through all the warrant articles that will be before you at town meeting on May 4th. And it's your opportunity to start to get up to speed and to ask any questions. The Warrant Committee really appreciates your input, since after the open hearing, they will finalize their votes and do the write-ups that you will then see in the blue book that goes out to all the households. So that's next Monday, the 16th, town meeting, May 4th at 7 o'clock at the Region. We had a caucus last night where nominations were taken for the various elected positions that were open, and I assume that those will be on the town website shortly. I meant to ask the town clerk, but it should be shortly. There were a whole bunch of positions: school committee, regional school committee, planning board, cemetery commission, and so forth. I would say that in every single position except one, current committee members re-upped, which is nice to see that continued dedication. And as I said in the beginning of tonight, Candace McCann is the current nominee for the open selectman position. But take a look at the website shortly, and those positions will be on. Those positions will be voted for at the town election, which is 2 weeks after town meeting, so that will make it May 18th, all day in the Great Hall. And based on the conversation tonight with the warrant committee, I would expect that the election of town officials will be the only thing on the ballot for town election. There's no special articles for it. Would you like to?
Yes, I would like to thank the Carroll Management Advisory Committee who held an open house at the Carroll Community Center this past Saturday from 11 to 1. They did a great job, they had a nice presentation. We had maybe a few dozen people come walking through, gain some knowledge on the renovations that are necessary to that building. The Dover Historical Society put up a nice exhibit, that came out very nice. So I want to thank CMAC once again, Kathy Weld was chair, and for all those who attended Saturday, thank you very much.
I might add that the Dover Historical Society's exhibit is actually a permanent exhibit.
Yes, thank you for saying that.
And it's on the first floor, right by the staircase going upstairs, and they'll have revolving exhibits. But the current one is absolutely wonderful. It's Rich Farrer's watercolors of historical Dover, and they're absolutely fantastic.
You just look fine.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Anything else, Rosa?
I don't have anything to say.
Anything? No? Okay, then I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.